What's up, people? Welcome to this episode of the By the Hood podcast or webcast because I don't know how you're consuming this content. I'm your host as always. My name is Jimmy, and as we start off every show, that's with gratitude. Just want to say thank you to anyone and everyone who supports any work that we do. Special shout out to all the students from By the Hood University, as well as all the youth from the By the Hood Ownership Camp. Speaking of the ownership camp will be starting at the end of June. This episode will probably drop around June 1st, so that means you have a couple weeks left still to get tickets for our black tie affair that we're having June 18th to support our camp. So for the camp, it goes from kids ages 5 and up. It's completely free. We're going to teach them about the basics of finance, talk a little bit about real estate, as well as the stock market and cryptocurrency. And again, it's for kids ages 5 and up. It's completely free. And we want to shout out Better Than Success as well as Philadelphia Real Estate Week for partnering with us to take our camp to the next level. And they've arranged for this amazing event coming June 18th. And for more information about that black tie event, it'll be in the description as well as the show notes. It's the No Real Estate Gala. It's black tie, so we're going to get suited and booted. DJ Active is there. Food is there. Open bar. So we're going to have a ball, but it's all for the benefit of the youth from the By the Hood Ownership Camp. I got my partner in the crime, Corey, with me. Corey, what's up with you, good brother?
What it is, though. Every day above ground's a good day, so let's go get it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And as you know, our platform is designed to highlight brothers and sisters who are doing positive work in the community, putting out positive energy, doing things to better our community. And we have a brother with us who's a real estate investor. He's a community activist. He wears so many hats. I'll let him tell a story, but he's doing a lot of positive work. He actually invited me onto his platform that he shares with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I want to bring on our brother, Derrick Cain, to talk about his work. Derrick, what's up, good brother?
What's going on, guys? How y'all doing today?
Oh, man, we can't complain, man. Everything's good, man. So how are you, first and foremost?
I'm doing well. It's a little hot, but I'm all right.
Yeah. It's definitely.
You should have seen quick.
Man, listen. It's definitely hot out here in Philly, man.
Right.
Well, listen, man, let's get right to it, man. You're doing a lot of positive work, and we want to make sure that we share your story. But tell us a little bit about your background. Where were you born and raised, and how was your upbringing?
Well, my upbringing is, let me start off like this way. My story isn't kind of like traditional where, for me, we moved from North Philly when I was young to the Northeast. So pretty much that's where I grew up at, was in the far Northeast. And being around so many different ethnic groups at the time, or majority white, but I've got to learn a lot about all the other ethnic groups being in the Northeast, because it kind of was in the complexes that we lived at, because none of us really lived in the houses. We all lived in the complexes. It was just like a melting pot within those complexes. So yeah, so for the most part, I mean, going back and forth from North Philly to Northeast, visiting family stuff, that's pretty much how I was, raised in the city.
Okay, what kind of student were you coming up?
Oh man, not a good one. Nah, not at all. I didn't really pay attention in school at all. I mean, I literally barely made it out of high school. I actually had to go to girls' high for for summer school in order to get my diploma in the mail. So I definitely didn't treat school the way I should have.
What high school did you end up going to?
I went to George Washington High School.
Okay, George Washington. Okay. As soon as you hear that, I think football. But
right, exactly.
That's either here nor there. But all right. So you went to Washington. You went to summer school to get that. When you were around that age, what were your plans? Like, what were your ideas? What are some of the things that you thought you were going to do with your life?
See, that's the thing. Back then, I didn't really have like a plan as far as really what I always felt like, man, everybody kind of knew what they wanted to do. I never knew what I wanted to do, but I did know I didn't want to go to college. I knew I was never college material. So that was one thing I was adamant about. I'm like, I'm just not going to go and get a bunch of loans and go fail out, because I'm not into college like that. So I didn't really have this is what I want to do moving forward vision. But I always knew that I had a good work ethic, and I knew that I was going to be all right. So that's kind of how I did. I winged it, to be honest with you.
Okay. So where did your journey take you after high school?
After high school, I started working with my sister actually in a warehouse. She was working there doing, she was in the office. She got me a job in there. She's like, all right, well, you're going to be in the crib. You got to do something. So I'm going to get you a job over here with me. I started working there, and there I met a gentleman who ended up leaving there working at a pipe fitting union. And he ended up getting me there. So at an early age, I was 19. I got a really good job in a pipe fitters union. So that worked out.
Okay, so that comes from just like networking, meeting people,
exactly,
and getting opportunities. Okay, so that's That's first. One of the want to make sure we mark that off. That's a gem right there in terms of like making relationships and
not even what you know, it's who you know.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, for the fact that he went over there, he left the job that we were at because we were both working together, went over there and thought about me because he saw my work ethic. So, I'm going to try to get him over here with me. So, yeah, exactly. Networking.
Okay, so where did that take you when you get into this good job? So what was your next step in your
So
journey?
at that point now, I'm working, making really, decent money at that time for only being 19, making the kind of money that I was making. But I still didn't, that wasn't my journey. Like I didn't want to work in a warehouse everywhere. So I wanted to get into real estate. At the time I was watching heavy HGTV, heavy. Like I was always watching that. I always kind of like, it became like a thing I wanted to do. So I tried to go out and I tried to get loans and try to get a mortgage, which I didn't have no idea what none of that stuff was, because at the time I always thought no credit was good credit, because my whole thing was, why are they denying me? I don't have any credit. That should be a good thing. Yeah. But for as I got to learn at the time, it's like, that's not going to work. You got to get some credit, and you got to establish yourself in order for these banks to even take you seriously. So at that point I knew I had to do more. So after constantly getting the denials for a mortgage and trying to get houses and trying to do the rent thing, I ended up selling drugs. During the day I would work at my pipe fitters union, and at night I would sell cocaine. So and I did that for a while until I was able to establish enough money to be able to go out here and purchase properties.
Hold up. So you actually, while you were doing that, you still kept your regular job too?
I always thought I was calling myself like the master of the Jedi back then. Like I just thought I had all the answers. So I would say, okay, well, I'm gonna sell drugs, but I'm not gonna stop my job. I'm gonna keep working overtime. I'm just gonna disguise the fact that I'm doing all this stuff over here, so I don't look obvious and I don't get caught. So that was my mentality at the time. So yeah, I would work 6 days a week. I would do everything, but at night I'll be selling coke.
Man, that's crazy. So I already know where that journey led you.
Right.
So tell us that story if you're willing to share that with us. Like what happened with that?
So so fast forward. Well, actually, really, what really changed me and really wanted me to be really focused and really want to take my financial stuff seriously and be more of a independent man. And my daughter was born in '98, so that kind of changed my vision then. So that's why I was really like focused on doing the best I could to support for my girl at the time, my girl and my baby. So at that time, I'm doing that. So in 2009, I end up getting sentenced. I get caught. They kick my door in, do all that. They find 1.5 keys in the crib, gun. So boom, now I'm locked up. My bail was 1.5 million. And in 2009, I was sentenced to a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence. And that was my first offense.
Wow. First offense to give you a dime.
First offense. I was upstate road at first, up in the state prisons. And at the time, I didn't know behind the scenes, because of the amount of drugs, they thought I would be able to give them something. So the feds made, the state dropped the case, the feds picked it up, and then they took me down to the feds. And that's when, of course, at the time, I'm like, I'm not, we got to rock out. I'm not selling nobody. It is what it is. You caught me, boom. So that's why I was sentenced with one of the 924Cs, the gun charge it runs consecutive to any other charge. Like, so if you get life, they'll give you life plus the 5 years for the 924C for possession of the gun. So I had that. They ran consecutive to the drugs, which triggered a 5-year mandatory. The gun triggered a 5-year mandatory. So they ran consecutive, which gave me the 10 to life.
So out of that 10, you walked off you did the whole 10?
Nah, in the feds, you get 54 days of good time. So with the good time, I did 8 years, 3 months.
8 years, 3 months. Okay, so tell us about that journey, right? So you got through your relationships, got put into this, this place where you're the quote unquote good job. You're still trying to make things happen a little too fast.
Right.
You got caught up. So like, what was that like for you, that shift where now your time doesn't belong to you? Like, how was that transition to like, okay, I got to do this time. That's a huge shift in like just a lifestyle. What was that like for you?
In the beginning, I was like I said, I wasn't that familiar with the federal law.
And also, this is your first time, right? So you don't have like a bunch of experience going back and forth.
Right. I knew dudes that went to the feds, but I didn't know the severity of like how they do things and how they stack this time on you. And that's why I think it's like a 98% conviction rate, because they put so much time in your face. Like, either you're going to tell or you're just going to take the best deal you can as far as, pleading out. So once I was able to gas all of that, because the gun that I was licensed to carry and registered in the state of Pennsylvania. So I'm still trying to get through all of that. Like, I can't believe I just got a dime for 5 years for a gun that I was licensed to carry. All right, the drugs, I eat that. 5 years all day long. I'm not gonna be the one to say I sold drugs. I deserve that. So once I got through that part, the fact that, all right, at the end of the day now, I got this 10 years. I got to do it. What's the best way to do this time without stressing yourself out and not being so much of a burden on your family out there? I remember when I first came on the compound, there was a boy in there and he had like 30 years. And he was just like, "You just coming in?" He's like, "Yeah." He said, "I'm here on a fresh dime." He said, "You got a fresh dime?" Said, "Yeah." He said, "Listen, I'm gonna give you some advice." He said, "You could do it like these dudes," and he pointed out on the compound. He was just playing ball, running around, just doing whatever. He said, "You could do it like them, where they just trying to milk time and just do whatever just to get the time to go by, or you can take advantage. You and the feds, you can take advantage of so many different people here. You have opportunities to meet people that you would have never met in the street, like." At that time, it was around the Madoff time. Madoff, they got locked up, and all the people were coming in. Plus, a lot of with the real estate, all the the lenders, all those guys were coming in. So I had a pretty much a vast majority of people in there that was just like, I can learn from these folks. Like I can learn. I want to learn more about stocks. I want to learn more about real estate. Here's my opportunity to educate myself because I got nothing but time. That's kind of how once I got that in my head and started to really grind that out, that's how I end up doing the majority of my time.
So you kind of got like a little college crash course in business in the feds, right?
I'm about to say, like, dang, like that's an ill education. Like you getting it from the best.
Right, but I'm gonna be honest. It was hard at the beginning. I had to weed out a lot of the, because a lot of them didn't want to mess with me. A lot of them wouldn't even walk across the street. Would walk across the street. They see me in the street, right?
Yeah.
So once I weeded through all those and found some real genuine guys, man, that were just really genuine, wanted to teach. Then it was like, okay, so we ended up setting up a little class, and every day we would sit down and we would trade. We wouldn't trade stocks at that time, but we wanted to trade stocks, so we would do paper trades. And my job in the feds, I worked for the print shop. I would print all the commissaries and all the handbooks and stuff for the prisons. So what I did is I had to look in my old stuff to find it. I had graph paper. I would print out graph paper, and every day I would have my daughter send open, high, low, and close for the stocks that we were tracking. And we would paper trade them. Wow. We would paper trade. I would do moving averages. We have it all on it. We figured he taught us how to do all of that. And we came up with a trading strategy while I was in the Fed. So that's what once we started focusing on that it was no turning back.
That's interesting, right? Because, meeting you and speaking with you, you a sharp brother, about real estate and the stock market and all that. And not knowing your full story, I wouldn't have never known this is where you got the education, right? But let me ask you this, and it may sound like a crazy question. If not for your journey where this happened to you, do you think you would have ever gotten that education on the outside? Like, did it take you being slowed down this way and being set down for you to actually focus and do this? Like, do you think, I don't want to say it's a blessing because you had to do a dime, but do you think that this is your journey? Right. Do you think you would have ever gotten this kind of education if you weren't slowed down because of the law?
No, I wouldn't have got it. And I do call it a blessing because I know when we talk about hurdles, once I stopped looking at my situation as a hurdle and looked at it as an opportunity, that's when it got easier. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a blessing that one, I wasn't killed. So I always look at it that way. I wasn't killed. So I had the lesser of the two evils. I went to prison, but I ended up going to a prison where I could basically go to college and get the knowledge that I would have never gotten in the street or been in the room with some of these guys that were teaching me these things. And I always feel like that was a blessing for me. It was meant for that to happen the way it did in order for me to learn the things that I've learned and do the things that I'm doing now. It was a blessing. But also, it was the hurdle part of it was just not being with my family and, not being able to be with my kids, that type of stuff. That was the hurdle part of getting through. And I had my ups and downs in there. But the blessing was I pretty much went to Lewisburg University because I was at Lewisburg Prison.
So would you say that prisons made you a better man?
Definitely. I had time to reflect on me. In addition to learning a skill set, I ended up becoming out a better person, a better man, because I had time to sit down and really reflect on some of the stuff that I was doing out in the streets before and really start to work on me as a person.
It's interesting like how
like
the mindset is, right?
Like,
Go ahead, Corey.
It's like, prison doesn't, people talk about prison doesn't rehab, but I mean, it does for certain people, but it's all about mindset. Right.
That's exactly where I was going. That's where I was going.
Yeah, like interesting. A lot of people talk about how prison doesn't reform or rehabilitate, and your story is different. You know what I mean? Right. I mean, you didn't commit a violent offense, and so you got a chance to do something, a lot different than some other people did. But you got a chance to sit down and rehabilitate yourself. Like you wanted rehabilitation, and so that's what you got out of it.
Right. That was the point I was getting ready to make, right? Unfortunately, coming from the neighborhoods that we come from, all of us know people that, have done time. And one of the things that I find interesting is everybody's experience is different, but it all really goes back to their mindset. you had the mindset that, okay, let me make myself a better person. But I know a lot of folks that don't have that mindset, and their journey, even in prison, is different because their mind is different. So that's just interesting to hear how you approached it, right? And you said that that came from someone in there schooling you, like someone pulled you to the side, right?
Right. And also to my family, I couldn't have done it if I didn't have the support. And a lot of guys that I went to, we did the time together, they didn't have that support out there. So I think that also, them encouraging me to do the things that I'm doing, for them to come up on visits to see me. A lot of these things, see their families for years. They never, they pretty much were forgotten. So all of those things, I think, in a nutshell, is what helped me get to where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because you always say the cliche, like, you don't do time alone. Like, everybody has to do the time, even though you're the one in there, right?
Right.
But that support system is important. So, for folks that got people that may have made a mistake or whatever, like, don't turn your back on them, because you never know. Your story is inspiring. How you said yourself, you become a better man and turned your life around by getting that time.
Right.
Wes, that's very interesting. That whole mindset thing. So now, after you get to the end of this journey, during the time and you come out, what has your focus been since you've come home?
Okay, so I just want to back up a little bit, because this is the most important part of why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Okay.
When in 2011, the Philadelphia Daily News did a piece on how mandatory minimums led to a surge of inmates, and they used my case as an example.
Okay.
Right. So I see that paper, I read it. It was a good piece. He wrote, he talked about the facts, the stuff that me being a first time offense, and how, if the judge wasn't tied by this law, he probably could have given me lower, but he couldn't, because he was bound by law to give me a minimum of 10. So about a week later, a gentleman wrote in the comment section about my case in the piece, and pretty much trashed me. When I say trash me, I'm like, I ain't a good father. I'm just a drug dealer. I ain't a good husband. He just went in on the fact that of, the stereotype. Here's somebody who's in prison. He wants somebody to feel sorry for him, but I don't feel sorry for him, because he's just a drug dealer, pretty much, is what the caption said. And I still carry that to this day. I have it laminated, because that made me think, if this man feel this way about me, how the rest of the world gonna feel about me when I come home? So that's why I really need to get myself together. So fast forward to 2017, I come home. For me, I wanted to not just change my narrative, but I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to be that person to say, hey, this is my story, and I want to tell it. I don't want you to tell it. So for me, I would go around, I would talk to people, I would do motivational speaking, then I would start volunteering, doing things with Men's Fit, just working with returning citizens, because that was something I was, was important to me, and I wanted to share my story, because I wanted it to be inspirational. So I end up getting, so Celeste Trusty, who at the time worked for an organization called Families Against Mandatory Minimums, and they're a great organization out of DC, who basically was following me through my whole time I was locked up. And she said, you know what, you have a great story, and it's a fellowship, criminal justice journalism fellowship that you will be great for. I'm like, all right, I'll try it. Why not? At the time, they was giving a stipend, and I'm still pretty much fresh out the halfway house, so I needed that money, right? So I signed up for it and ended up getting it. Now that changed everything, because now this is the journalism side that kind of came into play, and that's when I ended up meeting the co-ED at Resolve Philly, where I currently work at now, Jean Radulski, and she gave me a job. Well, if they were hiring, I decided, I could do a community engagement work all the time. I know community, but I just got to learn the journalism side. But I'm gonna throw my name in the hat anyway, and ended up getting the gig. So that's how I end up doing the stuff that I'm doing now, with being a part of the journalism process, being a part of the community, and also bridging those gaps between communities and journalists, and trying to get them to understand that the stories that you write have to reflect the communities that you report on, and you have to do it accurately, and for people to trust you.
Wow, man, that's interesting, right? So that goes back to that whole idea of networking and taking advantage of opportunities that are put in front of you.
Right. You got some amazing opportunities in life, and not that you got those opportunities, but the way you've taken advantage of those opportunities. Because a lot of people get those same opportunities and fumble them joints, and just
or don't take action at all.
Right.
Yeah, or get it and fumble it, or don't have any action taken on it at all. Every time you present it with an opportunity, you take it and run. And that's the other part that I want people to get from this interview. That every time that you were presented with an opportunity to make your life better, you took it. Even though your decision making wasn't we all make poor decisions at some point. But the thing about it is, you've made way more good decisions than bad decisions, because the decisions that you make have put you in the place you're in now. So I commend you on everything that you've done.
Yeah, man, this is powerful stuff, man. The one thing I want to ask you about is I know a lot of times when Corey and I speak to the youth, one of the things we talk about is like the idea of life being a chessboard and understanding the rules of the game, and what you were talking about in terms of mandatory minimums and how that game is played. Like, so I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, what is it like now that you've been through this experience and you see kind of how the cards are stacked against us in terms of sentencing, in terms of how we're perceived, in the grand scheme of things.
Yep.
How has that changed you?
I can't say, I guess we can say that we always knew that it would be challenging for us. When I say us, meaning people of color, we already know it's a challenge. We already know that. But until you actually go through it yourself and really see it in your face, and there's nothing you could do about it, that's really what really woke me up, and why I'm so big on speaking with folks, talking with youth, working in communities, because it's like, yo, this is not a game. Like, this can happen to you. It can be the most far-fetched thing in the world, but a lot of times it happens and it's true. So please, if you can learn from my mistakes, do that. So that's what really changed me, just being more of an advocate of, yo, come on, man, like, this is serious out here and it's not a game. So hopefully, me speaking and others doing the things that we're doing out here can help change. So that was my biggest takeaway from that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, right? So you talked about like hurdle. Would you say that your biggest hurdle throughout your journey to get you to where you are today is that the idea of not being around your family? Or what would you say is your biggest hurdle?
Yeah, I think at that time that was probably the biggest hurdle. It was just like, it wasn't, I ain't gonna sit here and say I was confident in everything. Of course I was scared. I was like, I'm stepping out my element, I'm doing things that I never did before. But I was just so determined. That's why I kind of overcame that. But the hurdle of not being around my kids, seeing my son was 3 when I went in. He was 11 when I came home. My daughter was 10 when she went in. She was 18 when I came home. Missing all of that. That was a challenge for me. And it's still a challenge to this day, because I still don't feel, and they never said this to me, but I still feel like they resent me for not being around at those times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's still a hurdle, still a work in progress with my children, because again, me and their mother are divorced now. Like, I had a divorce. Like, actually, they took my house. I had a house at the time we were living, and they took it because of the drugs and all the different things that happened that they had to witness. It's still an ongoing challenge for me to this day.
Man, that's tough. I mean,
Right.
thank you for sharing that. But that's tough. I mean, this is part of these stories and these journeys that a lot of people don't see, right? So life has its ups and downs.
Right.
Man, that's tough. But I guess you're working through it and trying to do the best that you can.
Mm-hmm.
It's the cards you're dealt. So let me ask you this though. So now you come home, you get this opportunity, you're getting into the journalism. Tell us about going back into real estate investing. How'd that come about for you?
Okay, so I started buying. So I was selling coke at the time, and once I started understanding credit and learning about it, I started to do, I ended up getting a loan. I finally got a loan. I got to start. So I ended up buying 3 houses before I got locked up.
Uh-huh.
And one of them they ended up taking, but I still had the 2 now. So for me, it was just kind of like trial and error, getting out there, learning, the areas, learning where, the opportunities coming in. My house that I have in Kensington right now, I paid $25,000 for it in 03. Wow. Now that thing, they actually building new construction on the block right now, brand new construction. So that was a good one. I had one in the Northeast, it's huge building in the Northeast that I've rented out, and I had that since 2016. 2006. Yeah. I had that since 2006. So it's like, for me, it was like, I see how they do it. I see how they purchase properties, how this thing appreciates over time. Yeah, you have some bumpy, markets, whatever, but for the most part, compounded year over year, you're going to make out with this property. So it was like, all right, that's a way that I can bring in passive income, because I look at real estate like this. I look at real estate like a stock. You buy your stock, and you buy stock with dividends. Some have dividends, so they're paying you to own this stock. Mm-hmm. That's how I look at real estate. I bought the real estate, the stock, and I get the dividends to rent every month. And I just let it sit. And I let it compound over years and over years and over years. I was never one to flip. I always wanted to buy and hold. Always buy and hold to this day.
Yeah. Man, that's great stuff, man. So you got that going for you. Mm-hmm. You got the journalism going for you. You're working in the communities. This is amazing, man. Your journey, and I'm pretty sure this episode will inspire folks that may be going through what you're going through. So I know that you make it your business to talk to returning citizens and to help others that may be going through some of the things that you went through. What has that work been like for you as you see yourself helping others that are currently walking the path that you went through?
To be honest, it's hard. And the part of it that why I say it's rewarding that I'm able to do it, but it's hard because if I can't, some people, you can say whatever you want to say. It's up to them to, to want to accept that. And when I'm having conversations, when I'm in the communities and I'm seeing that, sometimes I just don't feel like I'm doing enough. So it's mentally draining. It really is. Even though I don't stop it, it's been weighing on me, especially with the gun violence and stuff. And it's like, you want to, to try to make sure that they don't go down the same road that you went down. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's only but so much you can do. And I think for me, reminding myself that planting the seed is just as important, because the seed may not grow while I'm standing there. It may grow down the road, but that seed is planted. And I have to remind myself, because otherwise, sometimes I go to bed stressed out, thinking about all the things that I want to do, all the things that I wish I could do, but knowing that I don't have the power to do it all in one day, obviously.
Man, that's a gem right there, man. I like that. With that just that phrase, planting the seed is important. I think that we forget that a lot of times, not just in community work, like you just went through the real estate thing and investing, right? You planted that seed years ago, and that, like you just talked about Kensington, you planted that seed years ago, right? So a lot of times I think that we don't focus enough on just planting the seed, because you don't know when it's going to have that harvest. But planting the seed is part of the process, and probably the most important part, because again, it's taking action. And what I will say to you is, I totally understand your frustration, but you can't stop, because if you save one life, that means it's worth it. And I'm pretty sure that, you sharing your story and being transparent and open about it and talking about your mistakes will help others, man. Corey, you have some questions for the brother?
I do. So do you think your ownership journey helped you through your incarceration time?
Definitely. Yeah, you're talking about as far as having the real estate?
Yeah,
definitely, because that helped out. The money coming in for that helped. My parents, they was doing the best they could, but that property, owning that property, the rent coming in, and I was thankful because one of them are still my tenant from way back when, but both houses, they were there the whole time, so I didn't have to worry about them having to be empty and all. Like, I had great tenants, they paid on time, and that really helped out through the journey, because I knew when I came home, at least I had that foundation still there. I could build on that.
So you weren't in a rush when you came home. You had something. You had a little nest egg to the side.
No, I was still in a rush. No.
I'm just saying though, like you wasn't going to starve. You wasn't going to miss a meal on when you got home. So not that the opportunities was able to present themselves because you was able to take your time and look at the opportunities instead of I'm hungry. I gotta get right back out here right now. You know what I mean? Like.
We've seen that. We've seen people do that, jump right back into the same thing.
Because they don't have that nest egg to the side.
Well, that goes to planting the seed. But go ahead.
That's why I was going to take it. That goes back to the seeds being planted, giving you the opportunity to look at things and being able to do things. So there's a lot of gems in what you're saying and what you're doing. But the thing about it is that you thought about your future self when you were your younger self, even when you weren't making the best decisions. You still thought about your future self. Like I said, we none of us have a crystal ball, and I'm never going to be the one to say, people shouldn't sell drugs and all this other stuff, because I grew up in the heart of North Philly, and drugs got slang. You know what I mean? So, So this is not about judgment. This is just about, the process, like you said. You went through a lot of things, and you went through those things because you got caught doing what you was doing. You took full responsibility for it. Said, look, I did what I did. You know what I mean? Like, so there's nothing else to say about it. You took responsibility for it. You did the time for it, and then you made amends for it in your actions. So there's nothing else to be said about that. And like I said, that's commendable. So do your thing, and continue to do your thing, man. Like I said, I want to commend you on the things that you're doing now and the decisions that you're making now.
I appreciate it, but I like to be so transparent when I have these interviews, and I'm excited about this because throughout the interviews that I've had, I've never really got to talk about this type of conversation, the houses, the doing the real estate, they're talking about the real. Like, I don't really get to talk about it so much. So to be able to talk about it today, I appreciate you guys for having me on and having this discussion. And I also want to share that, and this is where I know a lot of folks that that come home, men and women, find themselves in like these little having these challenges. And I went through those same things where I thought about, like, man, I could just go back and then real quick and then, you know what I mean? Like when everything wasn't
Yeah.
Because again, I still came home in a rush. I'm way more patient than I was before, but I still had those moments, and I just want to be transparent about that. Like it's still, you have to continue to work on this mental, because you can, even with the foundation that I had, there were still times where I was like, man, you know what, and I didn't. But it took me reaching out to a friend, me reaching out to my parents or somebody, just saying like, I'm having some struggles here, and they would just say, listen, you came this far, don't look back, just continue on. I had to be encouraged too. So I just want everybody to know, like, it's, we have these moments, you just got to continue to fight through it.
Yeah, and that's the importance of having a network or
right.
Folks to help you. And I want to shout out your family again, because one of the things that's coming through in this conversation is how many times you talked about your family having your back through the journey.
Right.
Yeah, and that's so important. And I don't want you to take, no, not you, but I don't want even me or any of us to take that for granted, because one of the things that all of us know from the work we do is some people don't have that. Right. Some people don't have anybody that they can fall back on. So that's why we can't be too judgmental, because some folks out here, man, really are struggling, don't have family to fall back on.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's interesting as you talk about that is one of the things that's happened to me over the last couple of years. I used to be one of these guys that thought that most of our problems in our community were like, as Corey likes to say, economic problems with social consequences, right? Where if we were able to understand money, how to get our money right, that it would help a lot of us. But through the work, I think I'm kind of like changing a little bit, right? I'm going through this thing. Hear me out. I'm going through this thing because I put a lot of thought into this, man, because like Derrick said, there's sometimes where doing the work can be frustrating when you see the gun violence and you see kids that we know are bright kids that are just like killing each other and all this. But in talking to them, one of the things that I recognize is mental health might be half of the. I think now where I'm at now is economic and is mental health, right? Yep. So I think they might be 50-50, Corey. That's where I'm going with it. And this is just coming from my experience.
It's not 50-50 though, right? Because you can get more help if you have more resources, right?
Understood.
So
understood.
Not to say that you're wrong about the mental health, because I work in the mental health field.
Yeah.
And so I see it every day. But my thing is, when you have more resources, then you have the things that are available to the people who have more resources aren't available to the people who don't have those same resources.
No, but I get that. But one of the things about our history and how mental health has been stigmatized. So some people actually have resources and still don't get the help that they need because of the way mental health is looked at in our community. And that's the only thing I'm saying. I still think that a lot of it are economic problems, but I think that mental health is a huge part of it. That's just where I'm at with it based upon the work and talking to kids, because a lot of times, we'll see the result of all these things, which is the gun violence, the robberies, the carjackings, all these things. But most of these kids, I'm not even going to say all of them, most of these kids were born innocent. And when you talk to them and talk about some of the things they've seen along their journey, you say, oh, okay. Whether it's like, abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, what they've seen in their households. And that's not all of them, but it's a large majority of them have come from situations where, not to say you understand, but it's like, wow. So the mental health part is tough. So the reason I'm having this whole conversation with you is, when you do the work, do you see some of these same things, or what is your standpoint when it comes to like mental health?
You're right on point with that, because for me, that's kind of been my shift. I was one of those who didn't. Well, I mean, that's again, like we talk about the going to a therapist is taboo in our community. We know that. What happens in this house, stay in this house. That's how we all grew up.
Man, listen.
So for me, it was like until 2019. I started seeing a therapist in 2019, and in 2019 is when I really started to understand and started connecting the dots in my life. Even went back to why now I knew why I sold drugs. Like once I started connecting the dots of how I grew up, even though I had a 2-parent household and not like the traditional, single parent household, the trauma that was happening within my household and the things that was going on. And my mom would always say, I'm tired of living from check to check. I mean, they had arguments and fighting, physically fighting and hearing all that. For me, that triggered something. So that's why I was like, I'm never going to be broke ever. I'm never living check to check, and just kind of helped influence my decision making, even though it might not have been the best. But just to get back to your question, when I talk to kids, I think that's the thing, because the cycle of them seeing whatever they're seeing constantly plays on their mental, whether people believe it or not. But until we take advantage of the resources, I don't know if having the resources in the community is great. Yes, I totally agree with Corey on that. We need the resources, more resources, and more resources. But if we still have this stigma about therapy, and we don't want to take advantage of it, it doesn't do anything if it's on the block, because they're not going in and seeing anybody, And I think that's where the frustration's coming in at. I'm having conversations with and I'm finding more and more when we start having deep conversations with them, with the youth.
Yeah,
that's what comes up. It's things that they're tired of. It's things that they want to deal with. It's low self-esteem. It's all these different things that they're dealing with, but they don't know how. And social media times 10 makes it worse. And I think that's where I find a challenge is, because I hate social media. I know I have to do it. That's kind of, a part of life now. But I think that's where we need to have more focus on working with youth and adults around mental health and taking advantage of the resources if they have them in their communities.
Yeah.
See, but the thing that y'all, what they're seeing on social media is the rock star lifestyle, the money, clothes, and the billionaires and millionaires and people telling them, everybody's showing their best side. They ain't showing them all the hard work it takes to get there. They just showing them the end result. And so that's all economic, right? So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they're being fed this right from before birth. They're being fed this, money is the king, and you have to, live. And so that's part of the mental, that's part of the trauma, right? These kids are tired of being poor, right?
I understand that part, Corbin. What I'm saying is, like, first off, majority of it's a lie anyway. It's not even true.
It is.
Right?
No, we know
it's been proven time and time again. So I get that, but what I'm saying is, someone that has the help or is it's difficult in today's time, right? So I have a nephew who's a teenager, so I understand how people look at social media. I get all that, but if they understand what's real and what's not, right? I don't think that having more resources solves that, right? So just getting more resources to try to buy the things that people are lying about anyway.
No,
that's how
it's not about buying things. It's about the ability to have options, right? And so what they feel is powerless because they don't have options. And so this is about power. This is not about the actual money. It's about the options that the money gives you.
But what I'm saying is the reason I'm making this shift and thinking that it's just 50-50 is because even as they acquire the power, how many people have money and power and are still miserable and are still
a gang.
Yeah,
they
so
don't use their options properly. Like what you're saying, the mental health
part has to be a part of it. I don't even care how many resources we get. If we're empty inside and don't understand, most people don't even get up a day after day and even know. And from Corey, we know that when we do seminars and talk to kids or talk to even adults and we ask them what makes them happy, most can't answer that question.
They can't even answer the question
because
I think it goes hand in hand. Then that's why I think it's something that needs to go hand in hand. I think the financial, the financial part of it as well as the mental health, because once you get the money, you gotta be in a healthy space, or at least try to be in a healthy space. So if you can't have. I kind of feel like nowadays you can't have one without the other if you really want to be happy.
Yeah, I do. I definitely agree with that, man. So, this is a great conversation, man, because we're talking to someone who's out there doing the work and has a perspective from what you're doing. So I love that you can share your perspective of doing this work. So what does the future look like for you? What are some of the things that you're looking to work on in the future? Now you've been home, you're getting yourself established, you've planted more seeds,
right?
And you're building your real estate empire, you're working in the community, you're working in media now. What does the future hold for you? What are some of the things you want to do?
I'm chasing a lifestyle, and that lifestyle is I get up in the morning and I do what I want to do. It's no dollar amount. There's no kind of like, okay, I want to have 30 houses. I want to be in the market. It's really not about a dollar amount. It's really about a lifestyle for me. I started to learn that early on when I was in prison about how important time is and what you do with it. And before I was grind. Where now I'm still grind, but I'm learning that time is valuable and you need to take advantage of that. So putting myself in a position to where I have passive income, whatever that looks like, enough to be able to live and kind of call my own shots. I think that's my future. I think that's so important to me. I had a mentor, and he told me before, and I asked him, what was your hardest decision? He said, my hardest decision of the day is what I'm going to eat. You know what I mean? Like, for real, that was his hard. He was he put himself in, and he's not like a multi-millionaire or anything like that, but he's content with his life. Everything's taken care of, and that's the hardest decision of the day for him. That's my future. I want my day to get up and say, what's the hardest thing I'm gonna say is what I'm gonna eat today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, throughout this journey, right, I'm pretty sure you talked about some of the studying and things you did when you were in prison. What would you say is your favorite book or book that inspired you along this journey that you've taken thus far?
Trader Vic, the master of Wall Street. Yeah, the master of Wall Street. Yeah, Trader Vic. Really good book. And the reason why I love that book, not because he talked about, strategies. He talked about all that, but he had a portion of it was about more of your mental, talking about how you have to not get caught up in your emotions when you're a trader, how not to get caught up in certain things, because when you have a plan, no matter what your emotion is the plan. So you stick to it. So he kind of tied in your mental health into trading. And I thought that was so bright for me. And I end up applying that in other areas of my life. Just having that plan and being, and understanding that you have confidence in this plan, you put the work into this plan, and no matter what your emotion is, you follow that plan. This is the end result, because you know that because of repetition. So I think that for me was probably one of the most powerful books that I read.
I'm looking at it now. Trader Vic, Methods of a Wall Street Master. I just added it to my list. I haven't read that book before, so definitely want to add that to the list. Trader Vic. So that's a new one. We never heard that one on here before, so appreciate that. Man, Derrick, this has been amazing, man. I just want to thank you first and foremost for your transparency, your honesty, and your willingness to share your story and help others. I just want to say thank you. We definitely appreciate you, good brother. I
appreciate you guys having me on, man. Thank you again. Keep doing all the great work that you're doing. I hear so much about you guys. That's why I hit my man up. He's like, you gotta get with Jimmy. They do it. So I appreciate y'all, man.
No, listen, and we're gonna do some work in the future, man. I want to shout out to my brother Kerry, who my brother Kerry is working on a program now. He's trying to put all the pieces together, but it's about returning citizens or the youngsters that we're trying to keep out of going to into the system. So I'll definitely be reaching out to you to see if you can be a part of that and come speak to them as we try to put together a program for the youth. Before we get out of here, Corey, you got any more questions, good brother?
Nah, man, this was cathartic. This was, able to talk to somebody that's really out here doing the work that everybody that we talk to is doing something, but somebody that's doing things that similar to what we're doing. So I appreciate, his journey in the way his, is playing out. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just know, Derrick, regardless of everything, brother, you're appreciated. I want you to know that, because we need more people on the front lines, trying to help these babies out here, man, especially in the city that we in. It's wild out here. So, but your work is definitely appreciated. And thank you for sharing your story with our community, man. And much continued success. And, we're here as a resource for anything that you need, good brother.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you again.
Absolutely. To our audience out there, make sure that you follow Derrick. I'll put all of his handles and everything within the description, as well as the show notes. Hit him up if you got any questions, but make sure you follow his work and help support him in any way that you possibly can. As we always say, it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much you keep. Game elevates, and we shall see you guys on our next episode. We love y'all. Peace.